All right, so last thing, just because we didn't hit on it all that often, what's going on in the world of Conor McGregor? What can you tell me about Conor? Is the Holloway fight more likely than the Ferguson one? I mean, what's the Malignaggi business that Holloway's bringing up at the press conference? What do you think is next for Conor McGregor, and what are you hearing, kid? I know you got your ear to the pavement, kid.
Yeah, listen, I hope it's not a Malignaggi fight. Boxing or MMA, I don't want to see that fight. I also hope it's not a boxing fight against anybody. You know, De La Hoya is trying to get him out of it. Stop. Oh. That's not what you do, dude. Get back to what you do best. That's mixed martial arts. What I'm hearing is a potential fight in March against Tony Ferguson. That's what I'm hearing. You know, that would be absolute fire. Obviously, you know, a lot needs to get done, but that's what I'm hearing is he's preparing for a fight in March. I think Conor McGregor is definitely enjoying his time, just kind of relaxing. He's got quite a bit of money in the bank, and a lot of people saying, you know, the whole thing with you know, the situation of him maybe slapping up some guy in a club or whatever, and that he was in big time trouble. I assure you that Conor McGregor, of all people, is very well protected, and no one's going to touch that guy.
Yeah.
So I think he's just fine. For people who are saying, "Oh, he better get out of the country," and he's going to do, he might get out of the country, but it's not because him or his family are in danger. I assure you, he's very well protected, and it will be just fine.
And if Ken Flo can afford a security detail walking from Meraki BJJ to his Porsche, then you can be sure that Conor McGregor
it's more than a detail. He's got more than a detail, and I think, he'll be good.
Yeah. All right, we did not have time to talk about the Ultimate Fighter finale, and we need to get to the Fresno show. So I just will quickly congratulate the new inaugural UFC Women's Flyweight Champion, Nico Montano. She gets the better of Roxanne Modafferi on the scorecards there. Congrats to the Sugar Show, Sean O'Malley. Big win over Terrion Ware. I like the Ware kid, too, and I thought he showed you a lot of skill and a lot of heart in defeat there. Big win for Gerald Mershart with the body shot. Ryan James with the comeback against Andrew Sanchez. Just absolutely absurd. And last but certainly not least, how about Brett Johns with a 30-second calf slicer to get the jiu-jitsu credentialed Joe Soto out of there. Kenny, I don't know if you saw it.
I did.
But that cannot be fun. That's a quick tap out of Soto. Rogan was saying that doesn't feel good. I can't imagine it does.
It was a cool submission, man. In some cases, when you go for a calf slicer, your own knee could be in danger. We see some people injure their own knee. But either way, it's like your knee is about to explode. That's the kind of feeling. It's a lot of pain in the back of your calf, almost like it's a consistent leg kick, but your knee just feels like it's just going to blow apart, and not a fun submission to be in. And Joe Soto is very, very sharp on the ground. He's a guy who's known for his submissions and known for his leg submissions particularly. The fact that Johns hit that very slick calf slicer was very impressive.
All right, big weekend with the back-to-back shows for the MMA leader. And we spin it forward now because this stretch of 10 live events in 9 weeks' time continues in Fresno, California. Octagon in Fresno for the first time. And Flo is jonesing to make some picks. So, all right, first we're going to recap these standings here. Team Florian led Team Anik 91-85 going into UFC 218. Flo went head-to-head with listener Matty O'Neill. If you recall, they each made 9 selections for UFC 218. And you guys finished tied at 7. You were perfect on the FS1 prelims, Flo, despite sending out a couple losers on Jose Aldo and Justin Gaethje. So Team Florian leads at 98-92 heading into UFC Fresno, and joining us to make picks for this weekend's card, UFC commentator, father, identical twin, John Anik is with us. John, how are you? You know, I'm fucking great today, but I'm not fucking around anymore. It's December, it's crunch time, and all we really need are some opposite plays right now to try to win this thing. So Team Anik going from here on out, it'll either be me, but if I'm calling fights, that's not going to happen. Right. So it's going to be Vegas handicappers the rest of the month with respect to our lovely listener, Sar. You know what? I promised a listener he could come on for Winnipeg, so we're going to have to figure that out. But I'm picking second, and we're going opposite plays today. I'm making picks for the first time since the 209 bet in March of 2016. So with that said, main card bout, Marlon Moraes, Aljamain Sterling. Moraes stepping in here for Ronnie Yaya and not all that far removed, Ken Flo, from the split decision win over John Dodson. That was 23 days ago in Norfolk, Virginia. That, of course, followed a split decision loss in his UFC debut to Rafael Assunção in Brazil in June, all of which followed this 13-fight winning streak that got Moraes to the UFC. So here he is, minus 185, as we said. Aljamain Sterling coming back at plus 150. Fourth fight of the year for Sterling. Last 4 fights, though, have gone the distance. Split decision losses to Brian Caraway and Rafael Assunção, followed by dominant unanimous decision nods over Augusto Mendes and Renan Barão. So Ken Flo, Sterling, Moraes, which way you go?
Well, listen, I think Sterling definitely has the advantage on the ground. I think if Sterling's able to take this to the ground and do it consistently, Sterling will win this fight, and quite possibly by finish on the mat with a submission. However, Moraes, I think, is just a phenomenal striker who's very well versed and knowledgeable when it comes to distance control, keeping guys on the outside and throwing variety without giving up takedowns. And if you do get Moraes down to the mat, he's very good at getting back to his feet as well. So, however, I'm a little nervous about this quick turnaround. It can come back to bite him a little bit, especially against a tough fighter like a Sterling. This is a tough one for me. I'm a Sterling fan, but I'm going to go with Moraes here. I do believe that this is a very special fighter who will one day be a champion in that division.
All right, and I will take Aljamain Sterling as the underdog for the opposite pick there. Pretty simple. Co-main event, Jason Knight. He had won 4 straight before being humbled there by Ricardo. What am I calling him Ricardo for? I mean, Jesus. Brain is just steamed out.
Lamas.
Ricardo Lamas. And it was inside a round in July, by the way, as Mississippi Mean goes down, but he returns here against the American Kickboxing Academy rep, Gabriel Mowgli Benitez. He's lost 2 of his last 3. Knight minus 265, Mowgli plus 205. Flo, who will it be?
Well, you're in South Florida, which is like Little Brazil. That's why you call them Ricardo. You know,
that's right.
I can
guess
understand
so.
that. Yeah.
Thank you.
In Brazil, he's Ricardo. Well, listen, I think that I think that Jason Knight learned a lot from that fight against Lamas. I don't know a whole lot about Benitez. I think he's tough. I think he's a pretty good striker. I think if Knight finds a way to take this to the mat, I think it's going to be all Knight. I think Knight wins this by submission.
Yeah, Mississippi Mean is no joke, and I think it's a bad time to be fighting him given the way that Lamas fight went down. I can tell you when it comes to Mowgli Benitez, he's had some extenuating circumstances before some of his UFC losses that haven't been ideal. You can take that for whatever it's worth. I will tell you that Javier Mendez told me before the Andre Fili fight that the hardest kicker he has ever held pads for is not Luke Rockhold, it's not Cain Velasquez, it's Gabriel Benitez.
Wow.
So we'll see if he can get that power kicking game going this weekend. I'm not sure. What I am sure of is that my fat ass is trailing in the standings. So we're taking Gabriel Benitez at plus 205.
Cool.
All right, main event, Cub Swanson, Brian Ortega. My favorite nickname in the game is T-City. Close here according to Vegas Flow. Swanson minus 120, T-City minus 110. First UFC main event for Brian Ortega. He's also still undefeated. 4 straight third-round finishes for Brian Ortega. You guys are going to probably say that a million times on TV this weekend. He's the first man in UFC history to accomplish that, and it speaks to his ability to rally in the case of his last win against Renato Moicano, and it just speaks to, I think, his finishing ability as a whole and his desire in pursuit of those finishes. He's also beat good competition, Kenny. Thiago Tavares, Diego Brandao, Clay Guida, one of your victims, and, of course, most recently, Renato Moicano. So this is a Brazilian killer here. 3 of those last 4 wins against Brazil. Now he draws the roster staple killer Cub Swanson. 10 UFC wins for Swanson against just 3 losses to Ricardo Lamas, Frankie Edgar, and Max Holloway. Swanson's won 4 straight, Kenny. Might have even gotten that opportunity against Max Holloway last weekend if Jose Aldo wasn't game. And maybe he gets another crack at Max if he can win here with some style points against T-City. He is slightly favored to do so. Your thoughts on this main event in Fresno and ultimately who will get it done?
This is another one, a lot like Gaethje and Alvarez. Both of these guys really only know how to fight one way, and that's exciting. And I think this is going to be a phenomenal main event in Fresno. Ortega is a huge featherweight man. He really also has really improved his boxing. Did a good job of getting his jab going in his last fight. However, he kind of starts late a lot during his fights. I don't know if he can do that here against Cub Swanson. He does have the advantage advantage of this being a 5-round fight, and I think the longer this fight goes, it probably favors Ortega. If the fight goes to the mat, Ortega's going to have a huge advantage here. Ortega is just very sharp with his submissions. I could see him submitting Cub Swanson. However, I think Cub right now is fighting with a kind of passion and motivation that we haven't seen in a very long time. I think he's become sharper as a fighter. He's been cross-training a lot with T.J. Dillashaw, and you see it. I think that he looks a lot better. I think we're going to see some new weapons in his arsenal. I think he's been fighting smarter as well. I'm going to go with Cub Swanson here in this one. I hate going against my buddy Ortega, but Cub Swanson, I think, is just a little bit better here at this point in their careers.
All right, and for some extra credit, you got a round or a